The Book of Prophecy by Stephen J. Guscott. Copyright 2026. Part 1. Fuel. Chapter 1 of Wolf and Man. Date 10th day of the 6th month, 695th year. The snarls of the wolf were drowned by Branan's command. Protect your brothers, Dragatu. Remember your promises. Dragatu's attack stopped dead. The danger they faced was too great not to obey. If he followed his fighter's instinct and attacked the monstrous wolf, he was going to get them all killed. Instead, he froze with heart-stopping realization, suddenly aware of what his father was doing. Branan, who was on the far side of the wolf, released an arrow. Snarling with a sudden sharp pain, the beast whirled around, ready to punish the culprit. The distraction worked, saving Dragatu and his two brothers, but all they could do was watch as their father turned and ran for the denser area of trees. Branan gave one final loving glance their way and was gone, enveloped by the darkness of night. The enraged wolf bounded clumsily after him, hindered slightly by the wound. A vacuum of eerie stillness was left in the gloom of the forest. "Let's go!" Dragatu suddenly cried as he sheathed his knives and gripped the shoulder strap of his bearskin pack. Eunyalus was the first to respond. He took Finon by the arm and dragged him into a run. Dragatu took the rear. They were running blind. From the dull outline of the western hills to their right, and the stars twinkling through the trees, Dragatu knew they were heading in a southerly direction. Yet there was no time to focus on the best path out of the bowl-like valley. He kept them at a fast pace, and the trees became a never-ending dark green and brown blur. Finon sobbed from up ahead, but Dragatu wasn't going to let them stop to console each other. Not when that monstrous wolf was out there. Abruptly, the triplets emerged from the tree line. "We've come too far west," Dragatu exclaimed. "This isn't the way we came in." He took a moment to catch his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead. His brothers said nothing, just staring, waiting to be told what they should do. Fully aware of this, he focused himself to stay calm and looked to the heavens to replot their course. "This way," he called. He led them south along the edge of the valley, making sure they didn't stray too far west up the hills, or east towards the exposed floor that had no trees. On and on they ran. Then suddenly the steady incline of the western foothills steepened dramatically, creating a grey wall. Dragatu glanced at it as he ran and caught sight of a small canyon. "That should give us cover," he said, pointing. "It's the wrong way," Eunyalus protested. "Yes, but it'll give us cover. Then we can continue south over the hills. We'll wait there for father." Eunyalus didn't argue anymore. The brothers entered the small canyon, walking quickly and cautiously, following it to its end. They crept from the shadows to discover the very thing that had brought them across the desert. "Water," they said in unison with a gasp. Dragatu stepped forward slowly, all previous haste vanishing as he beheld the hidden lake. He crouched at the edge of the solid ground and put his hand into the water. It was cuttingly cold, but he ignored it. They had found what the nation needed so desperately, and the realization had gripped him. His eyes suddenly shifted focus to the image in the water. The weak reflection of his black hair, square jaw, and broad shoulders stared up at him, reminding him of his father. The sight quickly dispelled the trance, bringing his awareness back to the threats they still faced. He stood up, shook his head, and strained to see how far the lake extended. The starlight didn't help much, but it was clear that water fanned and stretched out a long way. It was what they needed, but nothing could be done now. He scanned for another way out. There was none. The walls were too steep to climb, and he turned back around. The only option was to lead them back the way they had come. Eunyalus had already come to this conclusion. "Come on, Finon," he said as Dragatu turned to face them. "We have to go back." Finon sobbed again, turned around, and breathed deeply in preparation for the exertion that was so foreign to him. Such activity was more Eunyalus and Dragatu's domain. They hastened back through the passage, Drugatu taking the forward position this time. He was ready to protect his brothers. Emerging from the darkness of the canyon, they slowed to a cautious walk. "We must continue south and leave the valley," Drugatu announced. "If we can make it over the hills, we will be safe. Father may have killed the wolf. He could be waiting for us." "I told you that was the wrong way," Eunyalus said. "This is no time to argue, and don't be such a child." "Technically, I am a child," Eunyalus said flatly. 13 is just a number. We can't act like children if we want to survive. Now move! We can't waste any more time." Eunyalus didn't say anything else, and they started to run again. Fear made time chaotic, and they pressed painfully on and on, their lungs heaving and legs burning. Just as they felt they were safe, a familiar carnal sound froze them to the spot. "Ow!" The deadly call grew louder as it washed over them. The beast was close. "Father," Eunyalus murmured. Drugatu focused, looking around to assess his surroundings. "What shall we do?" Finon said, panicking. "Quiet. Let me think," Drugatu replied. "The trees," Eunyalus whispered, pointing up. "Go then," Drugatu hissed. "Be as quiet as you can." He pulled himself up a tree with great agility and gave a last command. "Do not move or even speak until you hear my voice again." They climbed as high as they could and waited, barely daring to breathe. Mere seconds passed when ominous panting rumbled below. Drugatu moved his head slowly, squinting down through the canopy of leaves to look at the bull-sized predator. The white fur was matted with even more blood than before, and it scanned the area with the piercing eyes of a merciless hunter. Its mouth held razor-sharp teeth that dripped with blood, the blood of their father. Drugatu held in a gasp, and a single tear ran down his cheek. The wolf prowled and sniffed at the ground, circling the trees. It suddenly stopped. Before Drugatu could even blink, it sprang to his tree, reared up, and clawed at the bark, tearing away large chunks. Drugatu closed his eyes in despair. Two things happened in quick succession. The wind changed, and then there was a loud thud about 20 meters away in the darkness. The wolf darted off in the direction of the noise. Drugatu sighed with relief. "What now?" Eunyalus hissed. "Down!" Drugatu called back. He reached the bottom first, followed by Eunyalus. They quickly helped Finon down from his tree. "Now run!" Drugatu said as loud as he dared. They set off, barely noticing the ground of the southern hill becoming slowly steeper. All their senses were alert for danger, all silently praying that the wolf wasn't following. Drugatu gained the courage to look back down the slope. He saw no sign of the wolf amongst the trees, but didn't allow their pace to slacken, calling out instead, "Keep going! Don't stop! Just keep going!" Up and up the hill they ran, and after what felt like an eternity, they emerged above the tree line, close to the top. Drugatu looked back again, seeing only trees and no monstrous predator. He slowed the pace to a walk, stopped, and bent over, trying to catch his breath. His brothers stopped as well, but collapsed onto the ground, lying on their backs and struggling to breathe. Has it gone?" Finon managed to ask. "I believe so," Drugatu said, listening and surveying the surroundings. "It would have got us by now, if it was still following," Eunyalus concluded between breaths. Finon and Eunyalus sat up, having recovered ever so slightly. "We must keep going to be sure," Drugatu said. "We can rest once we get down the other side." Finon and Eunyalus nodded grudgingly. They staggered to their feet and continued on, until finally they reached the top. Drugatu let them rest again, but only for a brief moment. "It's beautiful," Finon said, looking north beyond all the hills that rolled towards the snow-covered mountains barely visible in the distance. The rising sun was hidden behind them, but the light it gave was enough to show the greens of the valley and the browns of the closest hilltops. They formed a large circle in front of them, part of which they were currently standing on. "Let's keep going," Drugatu said heavily, turning and looking south towards the desert. "Once we've rested at the bottom of the hill and replenished our water at the spring, we'll have an even harder journey to get back home." They trudged down the hillside, briefly surrounded by trees once more, until finally they came to the flatlands of grass. It would be the last greenery they saw for 2 weeks. "We can rest now," Dragatu said when they reached the glistening spring. "Get the water you need and have some food. Then you can sleep. We're going to need to share our food and water. I don't have my pack anymore," Eunyla said hesitantly. "Where is it?" Dragatu asked sternly. "I threw it away as a distraction when the wolf was trying to get you." Dragatu looked down, his anger dying. "Thank you. You saved us. However, this makes the journey home more difficult. We're going to have to be very careful. Let's hope we find the same small springs, and can catch some desert animals. Although I don't fancy any more lizard." He smiled weakly. "We can worry about it later. Get some sleep." "What about you?" Finon asked. "I'll keep watch in case the wolf comes. I don't think it will. It will most likely return to its territory when it can't find us." Once they had eaten and drank, Finon and Eunyla lay down. Dragatu sat on a boulder next to the spring. He listened to their sobs, but it wasn't long before exhaustion took them, and they fell asleep. Dragatu sat still on the boulder, beginning to relive the horror of what had happened. He wrapped his arms around his chest, bowed his head, and tried to come to terms with the death of his father, crying silently into his arms. He remembered Brannan's last words, and thought about his unique burden, the burden of the Book of Prophecy.